"You're obsolete, Nadine. You always have been." He said it loud enough for his sister Phyllis to hear, loud enough for our daughter Camille to turn around with her mouth hanging open, loud enough for the mother of the bride, a sweet woman named Geneva who I'd spent 6 months planning this wedding with, to grab my hand and squeeze it so hard I thought my fingers would break. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and tell you how I ended up in that church, hearing those words on what should have been one of the happiest days of my life. My name is Nadine Washington, and I'm 71 years old. I've been a wife, a mother of 3, a grandmother of 5, and for the last 38 years, the silent partner in my husband Vernon's construction business. Silent being the key word there. See, when Vernon and I got married back in 1983, I had just finished my associate's degree in business management. I was sharp with numbers, good with people, and had dreams of opening my own catering company. Vernon was working construction, trying to save up enough money to start his own contracting business. We were young, in love, and stupid enough to think we could conquer the world together. "Once I get this business off the ground," Vernon promised me one night while we were eating leftover chicken and rice at our tiny kitchen table, "we'll do it together. You handle the books, I'll handle the builds. We'll be partners." I believed him. Lord help me, I believed every word. For the first 5 years of our marriage, I worked 2 jobs, one at the hospital as a billing clerk during the day, another cleaning offices at night, while Vernon built his business from the ground up. I'd come home at 11 o'clock at night to find him passed out on the couch with blueprints spread across his chest. I'd make his lunch, iron his work clothes, and send him off with a kiss each morning at 5 a.m. When our first baby came, our daughter Camille, I quit the night job but kept working at the hospital. Vernon's business was starting to take off, landing bigger contracts, hiring more workers. He was making good money, but we still needed my income to keep things steady. "Just a little longer," he'd say. "Just until we get over this hump." Then came our oldest son, DeAndre, then Terrence. I was working full-time, raising 3 kids, and still doing Vernon's bookkeeping every night after the children went to bed. I tracked every invoice, every payment, every expense. I negotiated with suppliers when Vernon was too busy on job sites. I smooth-talked angry clients when projects ran late. I was the glue holding that business together. But my name wasn't on a single piece of paperwork. "It's better this way," Vernon would say whenever I brought it up. "Less complicated for taxes and liability. Don't worry, baby. This is our business. What's mine is yours." I was 43 years old when I finally had enough. DeAndre was in college, Camille was getting married, and Terrence was in high school. I sat Vernon down one Sunday after church and told him I wanted to make things official, put my name on the business, become a real partner. He looked at me like I'd asked him to set his truck on fire. "Nadine, you don't understand how business works," he said, his voice dripping with that condescending tone I'd started hearing more and more. "You think just because you do a little bookkeeping that makes you qualified to be a business owner? I built this company from nothing. Me, my sweat, my connections in the industry." "With my money," I said quietly. "With my support." "Support isn't the same as building," he shot back. "You stayed home with the kids. I worked full-time and handled some paperwork. That's what wives do. They support. But don't get it twisted, Nadine. Washington Construction is mine." I should have left him right then. But I didn't. I stayed because we had 40 years of history. I stayed because our children were watching. I stayed because the church ladies would have talked for years. I stayed because I was too tired to fight. So I kept working. Kept doing the books, kept holding that business together while Vernon took all the credit. He joined the Chamber of Commerce, got his picture in the local paper, even won a Black Business Owner of the Year award that he proudly displayed in his office. At the ceremony, he thanked God, his mother, and his supportive wife who held down the home front. Home front. Like I was just warming his slippers while he went off to war. The real slap in the face came 3 months before Terrence's wedding. I was in Vernon's office, filing some invoices, when I saw a folder marked Estate Planning. My hands were shaking when I opened it. Vernon had updated his will. Washington Construction would be split between our 3 children when he died. The house would go to me, sure. But that business, the business I'd poured my life into, would skip right over me and go straight to our kids. I confronted him that night. He barely looked up from his dinner. "The business needs to stay in the family," he said. "The kids will run it when I'm gone. You'll be taken care of with the house and my life insurance." "I am family, Vernon. I built that business with you." "You helped," he corrected. "There's a difference." That's when I started making plans. Quiet plans. I opened my own bank account for the first time in 40 years. Started saving money from the small allowance Vernon gave me for groceries and household expenses. $20 here, $50 there. I told myself I was just preparing for emergencies, but deep down, I knew I was preparing for war. Then came Terrence's wedding day. Before we continue, please drop a comment if you've ever experienced something like this. We'd love to hear your story and subscribe to the channel to help us grow. The morning started off beautiful. I'd spent the night at the church with the other mothers and aunties, making sure every flower arrangement was perfect, every pew bow was tied just right. Geneva and I had been up since 5 a.m., directing the caterers, checking on the cake, making sure everything was exactly how Terrence and his bride Aaliyah wanted it. Vernon showed up at noon, fresh from the barber, wearing the custom suit I'd had tailored for him. He barely said 2 words to me while we were getting ready, just checked his watch every 5 minutes and complained about the heat. The ceremony was perfect. Terrence cried when Aaliyah came down the aisle. The pastor gave a beautiful sermon about love and partnership. The irony wasn't lost on me. Our family filled the first 3 rows on the groom's side. Vernon sat next to me, his chest puffed out like a peacock, soaking up all the congratulations from folks who kept telling him how proud he must be. After the ceremony, during the receiving line, that's when things started to unravel. Vernon's business partner, a man named Carlton Hayes, came through the line with his wife. Carlton had been pushing Vernon to expand the business, maybe bring in some new partners, modernize their operations. "You thought any more about that offer?" Carlton asked, shaking Vernon's hand. "Still thinking," Vernon said. "Big decision." "Well, don't think too long," Carlton laughed. "We're not getting any younger. Might be time to start planning your exit strategy. Bring in some fresh blood." Vernon's face went dark. "I'm not going anywhere. I built that company, and I'm going to run it until—" "Easy, brother," Carlton said, hands up. "Just saying it's good to have options. Maybe let the next generation take the reins. Nadine here could probably give us some insight, couldn't you? I heard you've been keeping those books straight for years." That's when Vernon's sister Phyllis, who never liked me, never thought I was good enough for her baby brother, decided to chime in. "Oh, please," Phyllis said, loud enough for half the receiving line to hear. "Nadine just did basic data entry. Vernon's the real brains of that operation." My daughter Camille's head snapped around. "Excuse me?" But Vernon was already talking, his voice getting louder, that vein in his forehead starting to throb like it did when he got worked up. "Carlton, no disrespect to my wife, but she doesn't know the first thing about running a construction company. She helped with paperwork, sure, but that's where it ends. The real work, building relationships, managing crews, negotiating contracts, that's all me." Geneva was still holding my hand. I felt her grip tighten. "Vernon," I said quietly, "this isn't the time." "No, let me finish," he said, turning to face me fully. His eyes were cold, like I was a stranger, and not the woman who'd stood beside him for 4 decades. "You're a good woman, Nadine. You raised our kids, you kept the house nice, you did what you were supposed to do. But let's be real. In terms of the business? In terms of what really matters in building something from the ground up?" He paused, and I swear to God I could feel what was coming before he said it. I could feel it in my bones, in my blood, in every tired muscle of my 71-year-old body. You're obsolete, Nadine. You always have been. The church got so quiet I could hear the organist breathing 3 rows back. Camille exploded first. "Daddy, what the hell? Vernon Washington!" Geneva gasped. But I just stood there, looking at this man I'd loved since I was 29 years old, and something inside me finally broke free. Not broke down, broke free. Like chains I didn't even know I was wearing suddenly fell away. Obsolete, I repeated slowly. That's an interesting word, Vernon. Mama. Terrence had appeared beside me, his face twisted with fury. I held up my hand. No, baby. Let your father finish. I want to hear all of it. Vernon's face was red now, but he was committed to his cruelty. I'm just saying what everyone's been too polite to say. You're not equipped for the modern business world. You never were. You're a housewife who did some data entry. That's enough! DeAndre had pushed through the crowd, his wife Lakeisha right behind him. You don't talk to Mama like that! But the damage was done. Vernon had said what he really thought. What he'd maybe always thought. And he'd said it in front of our children, our grandchildren, our friends, our church family, and 300 wedding guests. Geneva was crying. Phyllis was smirking. Carlton looked horrified. And I felt something I hadn't felt in 42 years of marriage. I felt free. Okay, I said calmly. Okay, Vernon. Thank you for finally being honest. I let go of Geneva's hand, kissed Terrence on the cheek, and walked straight out of that church. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I walked with my head high, my shoulders back, in the lavender mother-of-the-groom dress I'd spent $300 on, past all those shocked faces, right out into the parking lot. My daughter caught up with me at my car. Mama, wait! Baby, I need you to do me a favor, I said, my voice steady as a rock. I need you to go back in there and make sure your brother enjoys his wedding. Dance. Celebrate. Eat cake. This is Terrence's day, not mine. But Daddy, your daddy just made a mistake he can't take back, I said. And I'm about to show him exactly how big that mistake was. I got in my car and drove away, leaving my purse, my phone, and 42 years of my life in that church parking lot. What Vernon didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I'd been preparing for this moment longer than I realized. In my glove compartment was a business card I'd kept for 3 years. A card from a lawyer named Octavia Morrison who'd once told me, Nadine, if you ever need help, you call me. Day or night. It was time to make that call. Because Vernon thought I was obsolete? He was about to learn that I was just getting started. I drove for 20 minutes before I realized I had no idea where I was going. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, but not from fear, from rage, from relief, from 42 years of swallowed words finally trying to claw their way out of my throat. I pulled into the parking lot of Sweet Mercy Diner, a black-owned spot on the east side where I used to take the kids for pancakes on Saturday mornings. It was 4:30 on a Saturday afternoon, right between lunch and dinner, so the place was nearly empty. I sat in my car for a full 10 minutes, staring at that business card from my glove compartment. Octavia Morrison, attorney at law, family law and business litigation. I'd met Octavia 3 years ago at a women's luncheon at church. She was the guest speaker, talking about financial literacy and protecting yourself in marriage. After her talk, we got to chatting over sweet tea and lemon cake. She was in her mid-40s, sharp as a tack. With natural hair she wore in the most beautiful crown of locks I'd ever seen. Mrs. Washington, she'd said after I told her a little about my situation. I'm going to give you my card, and I'm going to tell you something I don't tell many people. If you ever need help, if you ever decide you're tired of being invisible, you call me. I don't care if it's 3 a.m, you call. I'd tucked that card away, telling myself I'd never need it. But I'd kept it. Some part of me had always known this day was coming. My phone was still in my purse back at the church, so I walked into Sweet Mercy and asked to use their phone. The owner, a woman named Cordelia, who I'd known for years, took one look at my face and sat me down in a booth. "Baby, what happened?" she asked, bringing me water I hadn't asked for. "My husband called me obsolete in front of 300 people at our son's wedding," I said flatly. Cordelia's mouth fell open, then her eyes narrowed. "Vernon said what now?" I repeated it and watched her face cycle through shock, anger, and then something that looked like determination. "Use the phone in my office," she said. "Take all the time you need. And Nadine, when you're done, I'm making you a plate. You're going to need your strength." I called Octavia's number. She answered on the second ring. "Octavia Morrison." "Miss Morrison, this is Nadine Washington. We met a few years ago at Mount Zion's Women's Luncheon," she said immediately. "I remember you, Mrs. Washington. What happened?" Something about the way she asked, not if something happened, but what happened, made my voice crack for the first time that day. "He called me obsolete," I whispered, in front of everybody. "Where are you right now?" I told her. "Stay there. I'm 15 minutes away." Octavia walked into Sweet Mercy Diner 20 minutes later wearing jeans and a Howard University sweatshirt, her locks pulled back in a ponytail. She slid into the booth across from me and opened up a leather notebook. "Tell me everything," she said, "from the beginning." So I did. I told her about the 42 years of marriage, the business I'd helped build, the bookkeeping I'd done for 38 years, the estate planning documents I'd found, the way Vernon had erased my contributions and claimed all the credit, and finally, what he'd said at the wedding. Octavia took notes the whole time, her face getting more and more set. "Do you have access to the business records?" she asked. "Every single one. I've been doing the books for almost 4 decades. I know where every penny goes." "Bank accounts?" "Vernon handles the main business account, but I have my own account now. Been saving for about 3 months. It's not much, maybe $800. "Documents, emails, anything that shows your involvement in the business?" I nodded. "I've got invoices with my handwriting, emails I sent to clients from our shared computer, contracts I helped negotiate. Vernon never bothered to hide any of it because he never thought I'd need proof." Octavia smiled for the first time. "Mrs. Washington, do you know what your husband just did? He didn't just insult you. He made a tactical error. He humiliated you publicly, which is going to make a judge very sympathetic to your case. And if you can prove your contributions to that business, and it sounds like you can, then you're entitled to a lot more than just the house." "I want a divorce," I said. The words felt strange in my mouth, like a language I'd never spoken before. "I want out." "Then let's get you out," Octavia said. "But first, we need to move fast. If Vernon thinks you're serious, he might try to hide assets or change account passwords. How soon can you get me copies of the business records?" "All the important files are backed up on the computer at home. Vernon's probably still at the wedding reception." "Then let's go get them." Before we continue, if this story resonates with you, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our next story. Octavia followed me back to the house Vernon and I had lived in for 35 years. It was a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in a nice neighborhood, the kind of house I'd dreamed about when we were eating chicken and rice at that tiny kitchen table. Vernon had always been so proud of this house. His name was on the deed, of course, just his name. I unlocked the door with shaking hands. The house was quiet and still, full of memories that suddenly felt like lies. Our wedding photos on the mantel, the family sign Camille had made us for Christmas, the grandkids' drawings on the refrigerator. "Stay focused," Octavia said gently. "Get what we came for." Vernon's office was on the first floor, right off the living room. He kept it locked when he wasn't home. But I'd known where he hid the key for 20 years, inside a fake rock and the potted plant by the door. Men are predictable creatures. The computer booted up, and I got to work. I'd been doing this for so long I could navigate the files in my sleep. I copied everything to a flash drive Octavia had brought. Financial records, client contracts, invoices, email correspondence, tax returns going back 10 years. Everything. "This is a gold mine," Octavia murmured, watching over my shoulder. "Mrs. Washington, you weren't just doing data entry. You were running this business." "Tell that to my husband," I muttered. We were almost done when I heard a car door slam outside. My heart dropped into my stomach. "That's Vernon's truck." Octavia moved fast. "How much more do we need?" "Just another minute." The front door opened. Vernon's voice boomed through the house. "Nadine, where the hell are you?" He wasn't alone. I could hear Phyllis's voice and someone else, our oldest son, DeAndre. "Mama," DeAndre called. "We need to talk." Octavia ejected the flash drive and handed it to me. "Put this somewhere safe. I'll handle this." "You don't know Vernon." "I know 100 Vernons," she said firmly. "Trust me." We walked out of the office just as Vernon, Phyllis, and DeAndre came into the living room. Vernon stopped short when he saw Octavia. "Who the hell is this?" he demanded. "I'm Octavia Morrison, Mrs. Washington's attorney," she said calmly. "And you must be Vernon." Vernon's face went purple. "Attorney? Nadine, what kind of game are you playing?" "No game, Vernon. I'm filing for divorce." The room went dead silent. Phyllis grabbed Vernon's arm. DeAndre's eyes went wide. "You're what?" Vernon sputtered. "You heard me. You called me obsolete in front of 300 people. You erased 42 years of my contributions to your business. You made sure your will cut me out of everything I helped build. So yes, I'm filing for divorce, and I'm suing for my share of Washington construction." Vernon laughed. Actually laughed. "Your share? Nadine, you don't have a share. Your name isn't on anything. You were just..." "An employee?" I finished. "Interesting. Because I never got a W-2 form. Never got paid a salary. Which means either I was an employee you never paid, which is illegal, or I was a partner you never acknowledged, which makes me entitled to half of everything." Octavia smiled. She's been doing her homework. Vernon's face changed from purple to something darker. "You think you're smart? You think you can just walk in here with some lawyer and take what's mine?" "What's ours?" I corrected. "And yes, I do." That's when Phyllis stepped forward, her face twisted with spite. "Vernon, tell her. Tell her about the business loan." My stomach dropped. "What business loan?" Vernon and Phyllis exchanged a look that made my blood run cold. "We took out a second mortgage on the house 6 months ago," Vernon said, his voice flat. "To expand the business. If you leave me, if you try to take half of everything, you'll tank the company and we'll lose this house. Everything you love will be gone. Is that what you want?" I felt like I'd been punched. "You mortgaged our house without telling me?" "My house," Vernon corrected. "My name is on the deed, remember? I don't need your permission." DeAndre finally spoke up, his voice quiet. "Dad, that's not right." "Stay out of this, son. This is between me and your mother." "No," DeAndre said louder now. "It's not. Because you're talking about the house where Mama raised us. The house she cleaned and maintained and made into a home while you were out building your empire. You don't get to hold that over her head." "DeAndre, you don't understand business." "I understand that you humiliated our mother at our brother's wedding," DeAndre shouted. "I understand that you've been using her for 42 years and acting like she's nothing. I understand that much." Vernon's hand shot out and grabbed DeAndre's shirt. "You watch your mouth when you talk to me, boy." "Let him go!" I screamed. But Octavia was already between them, her phone out. "Mr. Washington, if you don't remove your hands from your son right now, I will call the police and have you arrested for assault. Your choice." Vernon let go, but his eyes were wild. I'd never seen him like this. So desperate. So mean. "You want a war, Nadine?" he hissed. "I'll give you a war. I'll drag this out for years. I'll make sure you don't see a penny. I'll turn our children against you. I'll make you wish you never—" "Dad!" Camille's voice rang out from the doorway. "Stop it!" My daughter stood there in her mother-of-the-groom dress, her husband Gerald right behind her. Behind them was Terrence, still in his tuxedo, his bride Aaliyah holding his hand. All three of my children had left the wedding reception. For me. "Get out of the way, Camille," Vernon said. "This doesn't concern you." "The hell it doesn't," Terrence said, his voice shaking with fury. "You ruined my wedding, Dad. You humiliated my mother. And now we find out you mortgaged the house without telling anyone?" "I'm protecting this family," Vernon roared. "No," Camille said coldly. "You're protecting yourself. You always have been." Vernon looked around the room at our three children, all of them staring at him with varying degrees of anger and disappointment. Then he looked at me. "You did this," he said quietly. "You turned them against me." "No, Vernon," I said. "You did this all by yourself." He grabbed his keys off the table. "Fine. You want the house? Keep it. Keep everything. But don't come crying to me when you realize you can't survive without me." He stormed out, Phyllis scrambling after him. We heard his truck peel out of the driveway. The silence he left behind was deafening. Terrence spoke first. "Mama, I'm so sorry. I had no idea he—" "Baby, you don't apologize for your father," I said, pulling him into a hug. "This is not your fault. None of this is your fault." "What did he mean about the mortgage?" Camille asked, looking at Octavia. Octavia's face was grim. "It means this is going to get complicated. If he took out a second mortgage, the house is leveraged. We need to find out how much he borrowed and what he did with the money." "I can find out," DeAndre said. "Dad keeps paper copies of everything in his office safe. I know the combination." "How do you know the combination?" I asked. DeAndre looked uncomfortable. "Dad had me open it a few times when his arthritis was acting up. The combination is your birthday, Mama." He never changed it. Something about that detail broke my heart all over again. Even Vernon's safe, his secret-keeping place, was marked with my existence. He couldn't erase me completely, no matter how hard he tried. We opened the safe. Inside was a stack of documents that made my blood run cold. Vernon had taken out a $300,000 second mortgage on our house. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was where the money had gone. According to the bank statements, $150,000 had gone to Carlton Hayes Consulting, and another $100,000 to something called VW Holdings LLC. The rest had been moved to an offshore account. "What's VW Holdings?" Aaliyah asked. Octavia was already on her phone typing. Her face went hard. "It's a company registered in Delaware 6 months ago. The registered agent is Vernon Washington, and according to public records, he's been transferring assets from Washington Construction into this new company." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means your husband has been preparing to hide money from you," Octavia said. "He's been planning this for months." The room spun. "But I didn't even mention divorce until today." "Maybe he knew it was coming," Camille said quietly. "Or maybe he was planning to divorce you first, once he had everything locked down." DeAndre sank into a chair. "Oh my God. The business expansion Carlton was talking about at the wedding. It wasn't an expansion. It was Dad setting up a new company to funnel money into." "Why would Carlton help him do that?" Terrence asked. "Because they're partners in VW Holdings," Octavia said. Still scrolling through her phone. "Carlton Hayes owns 40% of the new company. Vernon owns 60%. I felt sick. Vernon hadn't just betrayed me. He'd been planning it for months. While I was planning Terrence's wedding, picking out flowers and tasting cake, my husband was systematically moving our assets out of my reach. "Can we stop him?" I asked Octavia. She looked up from her phone, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked uncertain. "Mrs. Washington, I'm going to be honest with you. This is worse than I thought. If he's been moving money for months, if he's got offshore accounts and shell companies, this could take years to untangle. And it's going to cost a lot of money to fight. How much? More than $800. The weight of it all crashed down on me. I sank onto the couch, suddenly feeling every one of my 71 years. Vernon had outmaneuvered me. He'd been 10 steps ahead the whole time. "Mama," Camille said, kneeling in front of me, "listen to me. We're going to fight this. All of us. Whatever it takes." "Baby, you don't understand. Legal fees for something like this could run into 6 figures. I don't have that kind of money." "But we do," DeAndre said. I looked up at my children. All 3 of them were nodding. "Dad put us in his will as beneficiaries of Washington Construction," Terrence said. "But that company was built on your back, Mama, and if he thinks we're going to stand by and watch him steal from you, he's out of his mind." "We'll hire the best lawyers," Camille added. "We'll mortgage our own houses if we have to." "But we're not letting him get away with this." Tears were streaming down my face. "You would do that for me?" "Mama," DeAndre said, his voice breaking. "You gave up everything for us. You worked 2 jobs so we could have what we needed. You did Dad's bookkeeping every night after putting us to bed. You sacrificed your dreams so we could chase ours. Of course we're going to fight for you." I pulled all 3 of my children into a hug, feeling Aaliyah and Gerald join in from the sides. This was what family meant. Not Vernon's cruelty or Phyllis's spite. This love. This fierce, protective love. When we finally pulled apart, Octavia was smiling. "Mrs. Washington, I think we need to have a deeper conversation about your involvement in Washington Construction. Because if you can prove you were an integral part of building that business, and I think you can, then Vernon's shell company tricks might not matter as much as he thinks they do." "What do you mean?" I asked. "I mean, we might be able to argue that VW Holdings is marital property too, since it was funded with money from Washington Construction, which you helped build. We freeze the assets, get a forensic accountant involved, and trace every penny Vernon moved. It won't be easy, but it's possible." "There's one more thing," DeAndre said slowly. He was still staring at the papers from Vernon's safe. "Mama, do you remember signing anything a few years ago? Like a quitclaim or a property transfer?" My heart sank. Vernon had me sign some papers right after we refinanced the house. He said it was just standard paperwork for the new mortgage. "What papers?" Octavia asked sharply. "I don't remember exactly. He just put them in front of me one night and said sign here, here, and here." Octavia and DeAndre exchanged a look that made my stomach turn. "Mama," DeAndre said gently, "I think Dad might have had you sign away your rights to the house without you knowing it." The room started spinning again. "He wouldn't—" "Look at this," DeAndre said, holding up a document. "This is a quitclaim deed dated 3 years ago. Your signature is on it. It transferred your ownership interest in the house solely to Vernon." I couldn't breathe. "So I don't own any part of the house?" "Not according to this," Octavia said grimly. "But that might actually work in our favor. If he had you sign documents under false pretenses, that's fraud. We can challenge it. And if a judge sees that Vernon has been systematically deceiving you and moving assets, they're going to come down hard on him." "How hard?" Terrence asked. Octavia smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "Hard enough that Obsolete might not be Vernon's biggest problem anymore. Not by a long shot." My phone buzzed. Someone had brought it from the church. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. "You're making a big mistake, Nadine. I gave you everything. I made you who you are. Without me, you're nothing. I'll prove it." I showed the text to Octavia. Her smile got wider. "Perfect. He's threatening you in writing. Save that. Save every message he sends. Your husband thinks he's invincible, Mrs. Washington, but he just declared war on the wrong woman." I looked around at my children. At my daughter-in-law and son-in-law. At my fierce attorney with her locks and her Howard sweatshirt. I looked at the flash drive in my hand containing 40 years of evidence. I looked at Vernon's safe, now empty of its secrets. And for the first time in 42 years, I realized something. Vernon was wrong. I wasn't obsolete. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't nothing. I was dangerous. And he was about to find out just how dangerous an underestimated woman could be. The war Vernon promised me lasted exactly 8 months. 8 months of depositions, court hearings, forensic accountants, and late nights in Octavia's office going through decades of records. 8 months of Vernon trying every dirty trick in the book to make me give up. He cut off my credit cards 2 days after I filed for divorce. Octavia had predicted it, so I'd already opened my own accounts. He tried to turn our church against me, spreading lies about how I'd abandoned him and destroyed our family. But the church ladies, who'd watched me work myself to the bone for 42 years, saw right through him. Pastor Freeman even called me personally to let me know the church was praying for me, not Vernon. Vernon moved in with Phyllis and started showing up at Sunday service with a woman named Rhonda, who couldn't have been more than 45 years old. He'd parade her around like she was some kind of trophy, trying to make me jealous. But all I felt was relief that she was his problem now, not mine. The real battle happened in the courtroom. It was a Tuesday morning in March when we finally had our day in front of Judge Patricia Owens, a black woman in her 60s who had a reputation for not suffering fools. Octavia had told me Judge Owens was good news for us. She'd built her own law practice from nothing and had zero patience for men who tried to cheat their wives. The courtroom was packed. All 3 of my children were there, sitting right behind me. Geneva came, along with half the ladies from Mount Zion. Even Cordelia from Sweet Mercy Diner showed up, sitting in the back row with a church fan and a look on her face that said she was ready for a show. Vernon sat on the other side with his lawyer, a slick-looking man named Peter Cunningham, who wore suits that probably cost more than my car. Carlton Hayes was there too, looking nervous. Phyllis sat behind Vernon, her face smug. Judge Owens called the court to order, and Octavia stood up. Your Honor, this case is about a woman who spent 42 years building a business with her husband, only to be erased from its history and cheated out of her rightful share. The evidence will show that Vernon Washington has systematically deceived, defrauded, and stolen from his wife while she worked tirelessly to support him and their family. That's a serious accusation, Ms. Morrison, Judge Owens said. It's a serious case, Your Honor. For the next 3 hours, Octavia laid it all out. She presented the business records showing my handwriting on invoices going back 38 years. She showed emails I'd sent to clients, negotiating contracts and smoothing over disputes. She brought in testimony from suppliers who confirmed they'd dealt with me directly for decades. Then she dropped the bomb about VW Holdings. Your Honor, 6 months before Mrs. Washington indicated she wanted to formalize her role in the business, Mr. Washington created a shell company and began systematically transferring assets out of Washington Construction. He also took out a $300,000 second mortgage on the marital home, a home Mrs. Washington believed she owned, without her knowledge or consent. Vernon's lawyer jumped up. Your Honor, Mr. Washington had every legal right to mortgage property that was solely in his name. Property that Mrs. Washington was fraudulently induced to sign away. Octavia cut in. She held up the quitclaim deed. 3 years ago, Mr. Washington told his wife she was signing refinancing paperwork. In reality, he had her sign a quitclaim deed transferring her interest in the house to him alone. Mrs. Washington has an associate's degree in business management. She's not stupid. She trusted her husband. And he exploited that trust. Judge Owens took the document and studied it. Her face got harder with every second. Mr. Cunningham, did your client have Mrs. Washington sign this deed under false pretenses? Vernon's lawyer looked uncomfortable. Your Honor, there's no evidence. I have evidence, Octavia said. She pulled out another document. This is an email from Mr. Washington to his personal attorney from 3 years ago. In it, he explicitly states, and I quote, I've got Nadine to sign the quitclaim. She thinks it's just refinancing papers. This way, when the time comes, the house is all mine. The courtroom erupted. Judge Owens banged her gavel. Order! Mr. Cunningham, do you have an explanation for this? Vernon's lawyer was sweating now. Your Honor, I'd like to request a recess to confer with my client. Denied. Miss Morrison, continue. Octavia was just getting started. She brought in a forensic accountant named Dr. Helen Rodriguez, who testified about the paper trail. Vernon had moved over $500,000 out of Washington Construction into VW Holdings. He'd also been paying himself an inflated salary while claiming the business was struggling, the same business he'd used to justify not giving me any stake. And where did the money from the second mortgage go? Judge Owens asked. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up a chart. $150,000 went to Carlton Hayes as a consulting fee that appears to have no corresponding work product. Another $100,000 went directly into VW Holdings. The remaining $50,000 was moved to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Judge Owens turned to Vernon. Mr. Washington, do you have anything to say? Vernon stood up, his face red. Your Honor, with all due respect, I built that company from the ground up. My wife helped, sure, but she was never a partner. She never invested money. She invested 42 years, Judge Owens said coldly. She worked 2 jobs to fund your startup. She did your bookkeeping for 38 years without pay. She negotiated with your clients and suppliers. And according to these records, Washington Construction wouldn't exist without her contributions. So I'm going to ask you again, Mr. Washington. Why did you feel entitled to move marital assets into a shell company and mortgage the family home without your wife's knowledge? Vernon's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. That's what I thought, Judge Owens said. Ms. Morrison, do you have anything else? Just one more witness, Your Honor. I'd like to call Mr. Carlton Hayes to the stand. Carlton looked like he wanted to run. Vernon's lawyer objected, but Judge Owens overruled him. Carlton took the stand, looking sick. Octavia didn't waste time. Mr. Hayes, you're listed as owning 40% of VW Holdings, correct? Yes, ma'am. And how much did you pay for that ownership stake? Carlton hesitated. I provided consulting services. How much money did you pay, Mr. Hayes? Nothing. I provided services in exchange for equity. Services that have no documentation, no invoices, no proof they ever occurred. Isn't it true, Mr. Hayes, that Mr. Washington gave you 40% of a company funded with marital assets in exchange for your help hiding money from his wife? I didn't know. You didn't know? Octavia held up an email. This is a message from you to Mr. Washington dated 8 months ago. You wrote, "Make sure Nadine doesn't find out about the new company until everything's locked down. We can't have her claiming any part of it." Does that sound like someone who didn't know? Carlton's face went gray. I want to invoke my Fifth Amendment right. That's fine, Octavia said. You've already told us everything we need to know. Judge Owens looked disgusted. Mr. Hayes, you can step down, and I suggest you get yourself a good criminal attorney because fraud charges might be coming your way. Before we continue, quick question. What would you do in this situation? Let us know in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. The judge called a 30-minute recess. In the hallway, my children surrounded me. Mama, you're winning, Camille whispered. Did you see Dad's face? I had seen it. Vernon looked trapped, cornered, exposed. Everything he'd tried to hide was being dragged into the light. When we returned to the courtroom, Judge Owens had clearly made up her mind. I've reviewed all the evidence presented today, she said, and I'm frankly appalled by what I've seen. Mr. Washington, you have systematically defrauded your wife, stolen from your marital estate, and attempted to hide assets through illegal means. The quitclaim deed signed under false pretenses is hereby declared null and void. Mrs. Washington retains her 50% ownership in the marital home. Vernon shot to his feet. Your Honor. Sit down, Mr. Washington. I'm not finished. Washington Construction, as a business built during the marriage with both spouses' contributions, is marital property subject to equitable distribution. VW Holdings, being funded with marital assets and created for the purpose of hiding money, is also marital property. All assets moved into VW Holdings are to be returned to Washington Construction immediately. The second mortgage on the marital home is Mr. Washington's sole responsibility, as Mrs. Washington never consented to it. But, Your Honor, Vernon's lawyer protested, if all the assets are returned to Washington Construction, the company won't have enough operating capital to— That's Mr. Washington's problem, Judge Owens said. He should have thought about that before he tried to rob his wife. As for the division of assets, I'm awarding Mrs. Washington 60% of Washington Construction. The courtroom exploded again. Vernon was shouting. Phyllis was on her feet. Judge Owens banged her gavel. I said 60%, and I mean it. Mrs. Washington built that business. Her contributions were substantial and ongoing. She was never compensated. And Mr. Washington's behavior has been so egregious that I'm exercising my discretion to award her the larger share as a punitive measure. Furthermore, Mr. Washington will pay all of Mrs. Washington's legal fees and court costs. He will also pay her $50,000 in damages for emotional distress. Your Honor, this is outrageous, Vernon shouted. Judge Owens's eyes went cold. You want to know what's outrageous, Mr. Washington? Calling your wife obsolete in front of 300 people, stealing from her for years, lying to her face while moving money offshore? That's outrageous. This ruling stands. If you don't like it, appeal. But I guarantee you won't get a more sympathetic judge than me. We're adjourned. She banged the gavel one final time. I sat there, stunned. I'd won. I'd actually won. Octavia hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe. My children were crying. Geneva was fanning herself with both hands. Cordelia was shouting hallelujah from the back row. Vernon stormed out of the courtroom without looking at me. Phyllis followed, hissing something about appeals and injustice. Carlton Hayes looked like he was going to be sick, but I didn't care about any of them. For the first time in 42 years, I was free. The aftermath moved quickly. Vernon tried to appeal, but his lawyer dropped him when he couldn't pay the retainer. Turns out, when you have to give back all the money you stole and pay your ex-wife's legal fees, you don't have much left over. Washington Construction had to be sold to pay the debts Vernon had racked up. But with my 60% stake, I walked away with almost $2 million. The house sold too. Vernon couldn't afford the mortgage on his own. I got my share of that as well. Carlton Hayes ended up facing fraud charges. Last I heard, he took a plea deal and got 3 years probation. Vernon had to declare bankruptcy. His big, fancy construction empire that he'd been so proud of? Gone. All of it. But here's the thing. I didn't feel happy about Vernon's downfall. I just felt free. Free from the lies, free from being invisible, free from 42 years of being told I wasn't enough. 6 months after the trial, I did something I'd dreamed about since I was 29 years old. I opened my own catering company. I called it Nadine's Kitchen, and I ran it out of a small commercial space in the same strip mall as Sweet Mercy Diner. Cordelia and I became business partners. She had the restaurant experience, I had the business management skills, and the capital. Together, we built something beautiful. We catered church events, weddings, family reunions, and business lunches. We specialized in soul food done right, the kind of cooking I'd been doing for my family for decades, and we hired women who needed second chances, women who'd been told they were too old, too obsolete, too invisible to matter. My children helped me set everything up. DeAndre handled the business licensing. Camille designed the logo and the website. Terrence built all the furniture for the dining area. They were so proud of me, and I was so grateful for them. I moved into a cozy 2-bedroom condo near the church. It wasn't as big as the house I'd shared with Vernon, but it was mine, all mine. I decorated it exactly how I wanted, with bright colors and plants and photos of my grandchildren everywhere. On Sundays, my kids and grandkids would come over for dinner. We'd crowd around my little dining table, eating and laughing and making memories that didn't have Vernon's shadow hanging over them. My grandbabies would help me in the kitchen, learning the recipes I'd perfected over decades. I was teaching them what Vernon never understood, that feeding people, nurturing them, building something with your own hands, that wasn't obsolete. That was legacy. I ran into Vernon once, about a year after the divorce was finalized. It was at the grocery store. He looked older, tired, diminished. He was with Rhonda, who was pushing a cart and looking bored. He saw me and froze. I was with Camille and 2 of my grandchildren, buying ingredients for a big catering job we had that weekend. "Nadine?" he said quietly. "Vernon," I replied. We stood there for a moment. I waited for him to say something, maybe apologize, maybe try to justify what he'd done. But he just looked at me with something that might have been regret. "I heard about your business," he finally said. "Heard it's doing well." "It is. We just got contracted to cater the mayor's holiday party." He nodded slowly. "That's good. That's real good." Rhonda tugged on his arm, impatient. He let her pull him away, but he looked back once. I didn't feel sorry for him. I didn't feel angry either. I just felt nothing. He was a stranger to me now, and that was exactly how it should be. Camille squeezed my hand. "You okay, Mama?" "I'm perfect, baby," I said. And I meant it. On my 73rd birthday, Octavia came to Nadine's kitchen for lunch. She brought her wife, a beautiful woman named Angela, who was a professor at the local university. We sat in my little dining area, eating peach cobbler and sweet tea, talking about everything and nothing. "You know what I love about this place?" Octavia said, looking around. "It's exactly what you wanted it to be. No compromises. No one telling you what you can't do." "I owe you everything," I told her. "No," she said firmly. "You owe yourself everything. I just helped you get what was already yours." She was right. Vernon hadn't given me anything. He'd tried to take everything. But I'd fought back. I'd found my voice, my strength, my value. And I'd built a life that was mine alone. Sometimes at night, I'd sit on my little balcony with a cup of tea and think about that day at Terrence's wedding. The day Vernon called me obsolete. The worst day of my life had become the best day because it forced me to finally see the truth. I wasn't obsolete. I never was. I was a woman who'd worked 2 jobs to support her family, who'd built a business from nothing, who'd raised 3 incredible children, who'd survived betrayal and come out stronger, who'd started over at 71 years old and made it work. I was resilient. I was capable. I was valuable. And I was free. Last week, I got a letter in the mail. It was from a woman I didn't know, someone who'd seen a news article about my divorce and business. She wrote that she was 65 years old and had been in a similar situation with her husband. She'd felt trapped, invisible, obsolete. But reading about my story gave her hope. She was filing for divorce. She was starting over. I cried when I read that letter. Not sad tears, proud tears. Because if my story could help even one woman find her strength, then everything I'd been through was worth it. Vernon thought calling me obsolete would break me. Instead, it freed me. And that was the best revenge of all. These days, when people ask me about my ex-husband, I just smile and say, "He taught me the most important lesson of my life. He taught me that I never needed him to be whole. I was whole all along." My name is Nadine Washington. I'm 73 years old. I'm a business owner, a mother, a grandmother, and a survivor. And I am anything but obsolete. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.